Derek, as you know, one of the things that has bothered me the most about what I have learned about our movement, that is the people fighting against these registry laws, either as individuals or as groups, it's my impression that many of them are mainstream political party supporters. They vote for Democrats or they vote for Republicans, and I find that absolutely reprehensible.
Well, I know you didn't vote for Trump, so I just assumed you voted for Hillary Clinton.
Well, I've always had a philosophy that, and this goes back decades, 30 years or more, that this country is choking to death on two parties. And it's dangerous when the two parties, as we think of them as two parties, have increasingly merged into a single party. In fact, some political writers have described our two parties as just two factions of the capitalist party or two factions of the business party. In other words, we have one party today. They pretend to be different in one way or the other, but fact is, behind the scenes, when the elections are over with, those minor differences at election time disappear because behind the scenes they were shaking hands all along and cooperating with corporations that want fewer regulations, they want greater profits, and they want those profits and deregulations at your expense, not to that which best operates for the country as a whole, that where people are treated more fairly across the board.
Well, all joking aside from what I said earlier, I've always been raised, and when I was in my younger years, I always voted Democrat. I voted for Clinton. My biggest embarrassment in life, I voted for Bill Clinton.
I voted for Perot.
There you go. But I've changed my opinions over the years myself, and we all grew up on the two party, and it's like, the assumption is if you don't like Trump, you must be a Hillary supporter. Every time I argue on the internet, and you probably get this too, if you say something bad about the president, well, your candidate lost, get over it. Yeah, my candidate lost, but it wasn't Hillary.
Well, both parties are, I think, it's pretty evident now that they're not working for the American people. They're working for the 1% or that 1% of 1%. They're working for the billionaires. They're working for the Soroses. They're working for the other billionaires, whether in Las Vegas or whether in Wall Street in New York City. They're working for the elites. They're not working for you. And that you can see that with regards to economic policy, trade policy, the wars abroad of plunder. Both plundering peoples around the world in various wars, but also plundering people here in this country.
Well, the Republicans have always been tough on crime, but the Democrats have always been seen as the bleeding hearts, the more the voice of reason, the more in tune with people and stuff. So,
but that's an old snapshot. That's that snapshot of the bleeding liberal, the concern for the victim, and by the way, not just criminal justice victim who can be rehabilitated, but also social victims of lack of economic opportunity, or victims of their skin color who suffer in a racist society, maybe, as how you might look at it. Whatever that bleeding heart was, that's a 1960s view of things. For anybody today thinking about the Democrats being a bleeding heart liberal of the 1960s it's 5 decades out of date, and you need to update your maps. Updating your map means coming to the recognition and the realization that candidates like Hillary or Obama or Bill Clinton back in his day, these people are working for the corporations. They're not working for you. The evidence is in staggering amounts out there. And why would anybody in this movement who suffers so much, either being on the registry themselves or having a family member on their registry, give any support to these parties, both of which supported tough on crime, so much so that you'd end up with vicious, lengthy sentences for crimes that back in the 1960s would merit 6 months in jail or 2 years in prison. Today it's 5 years in prison or 30 years in prison. That's how far they've pushed that. Blacklists like the registry, private prisons like Derek was mentioning earlier in the program, things of that nature. So both parties have brought our movement a ton of grief, and for anybody to continue supporting Democrats or Republicans today, in my opinion, is simply not updating their political map up here, and we just start doing that.
Well, I know I've changed it over the years myself, because I've started to see I mean, looking back at the history, I mean, the Republicans may have written many of the provisions that was in the Omnibus Crime Bill of 1994, which gave us the Jacob Wetterling Act, among other things. But it was Bill Clinton who signed it. Bill
That's
Clinton
right.
was like the quintessential Democrat of the age. So,
Well, the important thing to realize here, Derek, is that for the program of plundering peoples abroad in Iraq, Afghanistan, all over the Middle East today, you have to make sure that any opposition to your plundering of people, peoples of foreign lands, you have to intimidate and bully people here in America. Domestic citizens have to be bullied, they have to be intimidated, but what better way is there than use of criminal justice with these long sentences, these sex offender registries, private prisons that look at profit, not people and their welfare, while behind bars. That's very intimidating to the people at large. So they tend to be cowed by the power of government, and when you're cowed and maybe with the media participating with government and keeping your attention on local sex offenders and sex offenders on the registry or other issues regarding crime, what you're not doing is watching their crimes, their war crimes, their plunder, their Wall Street plunder of the economy and the looting of our economy and the national treasury here in the United States. You're not watching the elite criminals, you're focusing on common criminals, which take 100% of the brunt and focus of criminal justice. Why don't we tomorrow start demanding justice for elite criminals? Imagine that we start arresting them for their crimes. It won't happen unless people become more informed about this, but let's take the focus off common criminals and shift some of it up to elite criminals and elite crimes. I think that would be a starting point, Derek.
that would be a good starting point. So in short, what you're trying to tell our listeners who have chimed into this, that the two party, that neither the Republicans or the Democrats are our friends. In a nutshell.
In a nutshell, yeah.
There you go.
Vote third party. We have to have a second party. I've been saying third party, but the reality is we need a second party in our country. We need a second political party. Right now we have one political party, however you want to call it, a capital party, the Wall Street party, the business party. It's one party with two factions, and we need a second political party in our country.
And a true one, not this fake ass crap like the Tea Party or the alt-rights or whatever there is out there now. Even though those were quote unquote new movements, they're still tied into the two parties, the so-called two-party system. So, I personally vote independent. So, I voted third, quote unquote third party this past year, and I've done that pretty much every time since I've gotten released from prison. Come to think of it, I don't think I didn't vote for Bush, and I didn't vote for Obama, and I didn't vote for Trump. Damn sure didn't vote for Trump. and stuff. But again, I think as you said in the last segment of our last video, people need to pay more attention to the political aspect of everything. So. I certainly agree with you on that.
And I think also, as maybe a final thing to say, is that in my experience, we on the registry and we family members across America who are fighting these laws, I personally believe that we have to widen our scope and start looking at the broader politics that are out there, such as some of what we talk about. Because my belief is that no one is going to interview us in any great depth about the legal arguments or about social arguments and whatever else that's beyond just the superficial that we are, because we are the subject. So they're not going to ask the subject about deep questions about the registry. They're going to let other experts weigh in. We're just the cannon fodder. We're just the subject of the matter. So we have to get smart about this by, again, reading wider than we do. Maybe it's about wars, maybe it's about economic policies, whatever it might be. But I think we have to be more horizontal in our approach instead of deeply vertical like we've been in the past. Even though we've gained from it, I think it's to our detriment today.
Yeah, I just say it's only I understand how difficult it is for people just simply on the standpoint that we're stuck in survival mode, as we've talked about earlier. most of us are just struggling to make ends meet, and it's hard to look at the broad picture when you're worried about, tomorrow.
Because, sad to say, facts don't matter today. We've seen that happen over and over again in at legislative tables giving testimony. You overwhelm with facts, and facts don't make a difference. The laws stand. There's no one legislator that has ever stood up for us and said we need to repeal these laws. So we have to find other tactics, other methods besides facts, and that gets into maybe another area. But again, I think bring ourselves to the forefront of public exposition, whether at the testimony table or on a street side meeting real people. Again, we have to be authentic in who we are and bring that to the public mind.
Yep. The easiest way to expand your horizons is to look outside of your narrow way of thinking, and so, start looking outside of our Coke and Pepsi political system here.
Absolutely.